Tobias? My wife's voice crackled through the emergency radio. The seaplane floated upside down 20 yards from the rescue boat. One of its pontoons had been torn away. Fuel spread across the water, and broken camera equipment drifted around the wreckage. Tobias, can you hear me? I grabbed the radio. I hear you. Isolde sucked in a broken breath. Behind her, someone was screaming and pounding on metal. Please, she whispered. The water's coming in. 5 minutes earlier, she had called me a coward in front of the entire film crew. Now she was trapped beneath the surface with the man she had chosen over me. A deckhand caught my arm as I pulled on my dive vest. Grant, you can't go in yet. We've got fuel everywhere. Kill the engine and keep everyone away from the spill. The Coast Guard's 8 minutes out. They don't have 8 minutes. My damaged shoulder protested when I tightened the strap. I ignored it and checked the cutting tool attached to my vest. The radio hissed again. Tobias, I don't want to die. I looked at the overturned aircraft. Then I put on my mask. I'm coming. 2 years earlier, I had made the same promise to 7 strangers in the Atlantic. That promise cost me the sky. It should have taught me that saving someone did not mean they would value the life you sacrificed for them. But I had always been slow to learn that lesson. I was 26 when the Navy ended my flying career. A civilian fishing vessel had capsized near the edge of a hurricane evacuation zone. By the time our rescue helicopter reached it, the storm was already pushing beyond the forecast. We pulled 6 people from the water. The 7th had been carried away from the wreck. My co-pilot, Lieutenant Mason Ward, looked at the fuel gauge and shook his head. We have to go. Grant, I kept my eyes on the swimmer below us. He's still moving, barely. We don't have the fuel to search another 5 minutes and make it back. Then we don't make it back. Mason stared at me. That's your plan? My plan is to get him out. Command ordered us to withdraw. I acknowledged the transmission, then held the helicopter in a hover while the rescue swimmer fought through the waves. The fuel warning came on. Mason swore under his breath. You're going to get us court-martialed, only if we reach shore. He gave me a hard look, then turned back to the instruments. 30 seconds. The rescue swimmer reached the survivor. We got both of them aboard. Then the engine began to starve. I put the helicopter down on the ocean before it could become an uncontrolled crash. The impact tore my left shoulder apart and damaged my inner ear. Everyone lived. The aircraft did not. Neither did my career. After surgery, rehabilitation, and months of balance testing, a Navy doctor sat across from me and folded his hands. You can fly as a passenger, he said. You may even tolerate short civilian flights. But with the vertigo episodes and the loss of strength in your shoulder, you cannot be cleared for active aviation duty. I stared at the medical report. So that's it? For the cockpit? Yes. I had spent my adult life training to remain calm while everything around me failed. No one had trained me for a quiet office where a doctor could erase my future with one sentence. The Navy did not abandon me. Captain Elias Mercer recommended me for a senior training position at the National Search and Rescue Coordination Center. I would develop emergency procedures and train military and civilian rescue crews. The salary was better than active duty. The hours were stable. The position carried authority. I turned it down. Mercer leaned back in his chair. You understand this offer won't stay open forever. My wife is filming in the Florida Keys. His eyebrows rose. And she asked me to join the production as an aviation and maritime rescue advisor. Did she ask because she wants you there, or because the studio needs your resume? I stiffened. Isolde and I have spent most of our marriage apart. That doesn't answer my question. I owe her time. Mercer studied me for a long moment. You saved 7 people and nearly died. You don't owe anyone an apology for surviving your service. That's not what this is. Then what is it? I looked down at my wedding ring. A chance to start over. Mercer's expression softened, but not enough to hide his concern. Make sure she's waiting for the same thing. I thought he was being cynical. I packed for Florida 3 days later. Isolde Wynn had been a rising actress when we married. By the time I left the Navy, she had magazine covers, endorsement contracts, and a fan base that treated every expression on her face like a public event. I had missed premieres, awards ceremonies, anniversaries, and one birthday because of deployments. Whenever she sounded distant on the phone, I told myself I deserved it. When I arrived at the film's temporary production base near Marathon, she greeted me with a quick kiss and checked over my shoulder for cameras. You made it, she said. I said I would. Her assistant, Marissa, hurried toward us with a tablet. Isolde, wardrobe needs you in 10. Isolde turned away before I could touch her again. I have rehearsals until late. I made dinner reservations. She frowned as though I had scheduled an inspection without permission. You should have asked first. It's our first night together in 3 months. Cashin and I have character work. The name made my jaw tighten. Cashin Reed was her co-star. He was also her ex-boyfriend. Character work, I repeated. She gave me a warning look. Don't start. I haven't said anything. You didn't have to. Cashin stepped out of a nearby trailer wearing an open linen shirt and the grin that had sold a dozen action movies. He spread his arms. Lieutenant Grant, the legend finally arrives. Former lieutenant. Still, Isolde says you once landed a helicopter in a hurricane. On the ocean. His smile widened. Even better. He put a hand on Isolde's lower back. She did not move away. I looked at his hand until he removed it. Cashin chuckled. Relax. We're playing lovers. So I've heard. Isolde crossed her arms. This is what I was afraid of. What? You showing up and treating everyone like a threat. I watched him put his hand on my wife. Cashin lifted both hands. No disrespect intended. His expression said the opposite. Isolde rubbed her temple. I have to work. Please don't turn my set into one of your command posts. She walked away with Cashin. Neither of them looked back. That night, I ate dinner alone. At 11:30, I saw Isolde enter Cashin's trailer. At 1:15, the lights were still on. When she returned to our rental house after 2, I was waiting in the kitchen. She stopped when she saw me. You're awake. So are you. She set down her purse. If this is about Cashin's trailer, you were in there for more than 2 hours. We were rehearsing. With the door locked, her eyes hardened. Did you check? I tried the handle. You tried to enter another actor's trailer in the middle of a private rehearsal? I tried to find my wife. She laughed once, but there was no humor in it. You've been gone for years. Tobias. You don't get to come back and start tracking my movements. I'm asking whether you're sleeping with him. She stared at me. For 1 second, I saw the answer in the way her shoulders went still. Then she looked away. This is exactly why I stopped telling you things. That isn't a denial. I have a 5 a.m. call time. She walked toward the bedroom. I caught her wrist gently. Isolde. She looked down at my hand. Let go. I did. She entered the bedroom and locked the door. I spent the night on the couch, telling myself that exhaustion, distance, and resentment could explain everything. It was easier than admitting my marriage might have ended before I came home. I threw myself into work. The production involved boats, underwater cameras, pyrotechnics, and a twin-engine seaplane. Most of the crew knew film equipment, but had little experience with ocean rescue. I inspected life jackets, emergency rafts, fire extinguishers, radios, oxygen bottles, and dive gear. I also began leaving sunscreen, electrolyte packets, drinking water, and motion sickness medicine near the makeup trailers. One morning, a young woman with auburn hair caught me refilling the supply crate. You know, production has people for that, she said. She wore a makeup department badge with the name Phoebe Lane. Production also had 3 people walk past an assistant who nearly fainted yesterday. Phoebe glanced at the medicine. Dramamine, ginger chews, rehydration salts. You expecting a war? Film crews complain more. She smiled. I'm Phoebe. Tobias. I know. You're the pilot. Former pilot. Her smile faded slightly. Sorry. Don't be. Facts don't hurt unless someone uses them badly. She studied me as if the answer mattered. You always take care of everyone? Only the people close enough to become paperwork. Phoebe laughed. Behind her, 2 wardrobe assistants struggled with a heavy equipment case. I stepped past her and lifted one end. She watched me help them carry it. When I returned, she handed me a bottle of water. For the paperwork. That was how our friendship began. She never flirted openly. She never asked about Isolde unless I mentioned her first. Mostly, she listened. That alone felt unfamiliar. The most expensive stunt in the movie involved the seaplane. The approved plan called for a licensed pilot to fly 1 pass over the water. Cashin would sit in the left seat for close-ups while the actual pilot controlled the aircraft from the right. During this safety meeting, Cashin leaned back in his chair. It's going to look fake. The producer, Martin Shaw, looked up from the schedule. What part? The flying. I answered before anyone else could. The part where a qualified pilot controls the aircraft? Cashin smiled. The audience will see I'm not really flying. The audience will see whatever the editor shows them. I have flight experience, 43 logged hours, an expired private certificate, and no seaplane rating. Several crew members looked at him. Cashin's smile tightened. You researched me. I researched the man asking to operate an aircraft with 6 people aboard. Isolde shifted in her chair. Do you have to make it personal? It isn't personal. It sounds personal. Cashin leaned toward the producer. One pass. I handle takeoff, level flight, and the low sweep. The licensed pilot stays beside me. I shook my head. No. Cashin looked at me. No, you're not qualified. I've flown. Not this aircraft. Not over water. Not at low altitude. He gave a small laugh. So, only Navy heroes get to touch the controls? Only trained pilots get to gamble with other people's lives. Director Atticus Calloway raised a hand. That's enough. The aircraft gets inspected tomorrow. Weather makes the final decision. Cashin looked at Isolde. She touched his arm. We'll figure it out. I watched her fingers rest against his sleeve. She did not look at me. The next morning, I inspected the aircraft with the crew chief, Dennis Holt. The corrosion around the left float attachment was visible once we removed the access panel. Dennis crouched beside me. That's worse than the maintenance report said. It isn't cosmetic. I ran a gloved finger along the weakened fitting. Metal flaked away. This assembly needs replacement. Dennis nodded. Then I checked the left engine intake. Salt residue lined the lower housing. Did this ingest seawater during taxi testing? Dennis's mouth tightened. Maybe some spray. This is more than spray. I pulled out my phone and photographed everything. The wind had already begun to rise. Small waves slapped against the dock. I attached a red warning tag to the control column. Aircraft unsafe for flight. Dennis signed the inspection sheet beneath my name. I was closing the panel when Cashin arrived with Isolde, Martin, and a publicity camera crew. Cashin pointed at the tag. What's that? The flight is canceled. Martin's face fell. Canceled? The left float attachment has structural corrosion. The engine intake may be contaminated with salt water. Cashin crouched and looked at the fitting. This is rust. This is the part that keeps the float attached. Can it be repaired? Replaced. How long? Dennis answered. At least 2 days if we can get the part flown in. Martin swore. We lose the permit tomorrow. Cashin stood. So we shut down the biggest sequence in the movie because Tobias found rust? I faced him. We shut it down because if that float separates during landing, the aircraft can roll over. He turned toward the behind-the-scenes camera. Apparently our Navy hero is afraid of salt water. A few crew members laughed nervously. I stepped between him and the aircraft. I'm afraid of preventable funerals. His smile vanished. Isolde looked around at the crew, then pulled me aside. Could you not do this in front of everyone? The plane is unsafe in front of everyone. You're humiliating Cashin. He wants to fly an aircraft he isn't qualified to operate. He's trying to make the movie better. He's trying to make himself look brave. Her eyes narrowed. You can't stand it, can you? Stand what? That another man might be good at something you lost. The words landed harder than I expected. I stared at her. You think this is about my injury? I think you haven't accepted that you're not in control anymore. I'm the aviation safety advisor. You're acting like a commanding officer. Because no one else here seems willing to say no. Cashin came closer. You hear that? We're all irresponsible children. And Lieutenant Grant is here to save us. Former lieutenant. I said. His grin returned. Right. Former pilot. 2. Phoebe stood near the makeup tent. Her phone held low beside her thigh. Cashin pointed toward the water. You get dizzy on boats now, don't you? I looked at Isolde. Only she knew how bad the vertigo could become. Cashin could not have learned that from anyone else. Isolde's expression flickered, but she did not apologize. Instead, she folded her arms. You do. The crew went quiet. She lifted her chin. You can't sit on a moving deck without medication. But you want to lecture Cashin about courage? I felt every eye turn toward me. I had told her about the vertigo during one of the worst nights of my recovery. I had admitted I sometimes woke up believing the room was rolling beneath me. She had held my hand then. Now she used it to make me small. I survived the crash that caused it. I said. Cashin shrugged. And now you're scared of everything. I stepped toward him. He did not move, but his jaw tightened. Caution kept men alive under my command. This isn't the Navy. No. In the Navy, people who ignored safety orders face consequences. Isolde moved between us. Stop threatening him. I'm warning him. You're embarrassing yourself. She pointed at my technical advisor badge. Remember what you are here. Tobias. You're not an officer. You're not even a pilot anymore. Her voice sharpened. You're a technical employee on my movie. I looked at the woman I had rejected my future for, and technical employees are still allowed to stop people from getting killed. Cashin reached into the cockpit. Before I could stop him, he ripped the red warning tag from the control column. He held it up in front of the crew. Then fire him. My hand curled into a fist. Isolde looked at Cashin, then at me. I waited for her to defend the man she had married. She stepped to Cashin's side, and in that moment, I finally understood. The danger was no longer just the aircraft. It was the fact that my wife had already decided whose life mattered more. Cashin dropped the torn warning tag at my feet. No one moved. The red paper landed face up between us, my signature still visible beneath the words "unsafe for flight." Martin Shaw, the producer, cleared his throat. "Let's all calm down." I looked at him. "The aircraft is grounded. I understand your position. It isn't a position. It's an inspection result." Cashin crossed his arms, and Dennis said the damaged bolts can be replaced. Dennis Holt shifted beside the float. I said 2 accessible bolts can be replaced. I didn't say the assembly would be airworthy. Cashin pointed at him. "But you can make it fly." Dennis's face tightened. "Anything can fly once." A nervous laugh came from the camera crew. Cashin did not smile. Martin pulled me away from the others. "We lose this location tomorrow," he said quietly. "The permit cannot be extended. If we postpone, we move the entire unit and lose close to $2 million. That's cheaper than a wrongful death lawsuit. Can we modify the sequence? No water landing, no low pass, no flight until the engine is inspected and the float assembly is replaced." He dragged a hand down his face. "You're giving me no options. I'm giving you the only option that keeps everyone alive." Behind him, Cashin was already speaking to the publicity crew. "Get the maintenance team on camera. We can turn this into a behind-the-scenes feature about how seriously we take safety." I walked toward him. "You are not turning a structural defect into promotional footage." Cashin glanced at the camera and smiled. "See, this is what I mean. Every conversation has to go through Commander Grant." I stopped in front of him. "Don't put that camera near the aircraft." "Why?" "Afraid people will see the damage isn't as bad as you claim?" "I photographed it." His smile slipped. I continued. "I also submitted a written report to production. The director, the safety coordinator, and the insurance representative." Martin's head snapped toward me. "You contacted insurance?" I copied the set representative. "You had no authority to do that." "I had a professional obligation." Cashin laughed. "You hear that? Professional obligation." He really misses wearing the uniform. Isolde watched us with her arms folded. Her expression did not show fear. It showed irritation. Not at the aircraft. At me. She stepped closer. "Could you give us 5 minutes?" "No." Her eyebrows rose. "No. If I leave, Cashin will pressure someone into clearing the plane." Cashin spread his hands. "I don't pressure people." Dennis gave him a flat look. "You called my supervisor twice this morning. I asked for a second opinion. You asked him whether my contract could be terminated." Cashin's jaw moved. Isolde turned on Dennis. "No one is firing anyone. We're trying to solve a problem. The problem is the plane." I said. She faced me. "The problem is that you refuse to compromise. You cannot compromise with metal fatigue." Her lips pressed together. "You always have an answer. That's why they hired me." "No. They hired you because I recommended you." I stared at her. Martin looked away. She had meant the words to put me in my place. They did something else instead. They reminded me that I had rejected a national training position because I believed this job would help save our marriage. Cashin walked past me and deliberately struck my left shoulder with his. Pain shot down my arm. I took one step back. He turned with false surprise. "Sorry, didn't see you." I grabbed the front of his shirt. The crew went silent. Cashin's smile returned, but his eyes flickered. "There he is," he said. "The real Tobias Grant." My grip tightened. He lowered his voice. "Go ahead. Hit me in front of the cameras." I could have broken his nose before anyone reacted. He wanted me to. A violent, jealous husband would be easier to dismiss than a qualified safety advisor. I released him. Cashin smoothed his shirt. "What happened?" I flexed my aching hand. "I decided your face wasn't worth the paperwork." Phoebe stood behind the camera crew, watching me. She gave the smallest nod. Isolde rushed to Cashin and touched his chest. "Are you okay?" He looked at me over her shoulder. "I'll survive." I let out a humorless laugh. "That's becoming less likely every time you speak." Isolde spun toward me. "You just grabbed him. He hit my injured shoulder. You're twice as trained as he is. So that makes it acceptable? Stop acting like a victim." For a second, I could not answer. She had seen me after surgery when I could not lift a glass with my left hand. She had watched me wake up sweating because I dreamed I was trapped inside the sinking helicopter. Now she stood beside the man who had intentionally struck the injury and told me not to complain. Director Atticus Calloway approached with the safety coordinator, Rachel Dorsey. Rachel carried a clipboard. "I've reviewed Tobias's report," she said. "The stunt cannot proceed as originally planned." Relief passed across Dennis's face. Cashin's expression hardened. Martin asked, "What about a temporary repair and a higher pass?" Rachel hesitated. I turned to her. "There is no approved temporary repair for that attachment." Dennis nodded. "She's right." Atticus looked at the aircraft. "We replace the damaged bolts, flush the intake, and have the licensed pilot perform a straight pass. No landing, no touch and go. That doesn't solve the structural problem," I said. "It reduces the load on the float. It does not remove it." Cashin stepped forward. "I'll take responsibility." I looked at him. "You don't get to take responsibility for 5 other people. They know the risks." The production assistant in the rear cabin signed up to carry equipment, not die for your publicity campaign. Cashin's mouth curled. "You keep saying die. Funeral. Crash. Is that how you justify it?" "Justify what?" "Being afraid." Isolde gave a tired sigh. "Cashin. No, let's say it." He pointed at me. "He can't fly anymore. He can't accept that. So he wants everyone else to be afraid too." I stepped toward him. "You have no idea what fear is." "Then prove it. By letting you crash an aircraft? By trusting someone besides yourself." I looked at Isolde. "Tell him to stop." She held my gaze. "Maybe he has a point." The words were quiet. They still cut through every other sound. I stared at her. "You believe I grounded this plane because I'm jealous?" "I believe you've been angry since you arrived. I found you in his trailer after midnight. We were working. You refused to deny the affair." Her face flushed. "This is not the place. You made my injury public in this place." Several crew members lowered their eyes. Isolde looked around and realized everyone was listening. Instead of stepping away, she straightened her back. "You want the truth?" "Yes. I'm tired." Her hand shook as she reached for her wedding ring. At first, I thought she was twisting it out of habit. Then she pulled it off. "Isolde," I said. She placed the ring in my palm. "I'm tired of living with a man who turns every choice into an emergency." Cashin moved beside her. She did not tell him to leave. I closed my fingers around the ring. "You're ending our marriage here?" "I'm ending it because you don't know how to live outside a chain of command. I came here for you. You came here to control me." I gave up a federal training position because I thought we could start again. Something passed through her face. Guilt, perhaps. It disappeared when Cashin touched her arm. She lifted her chin. "At least Cashin is willing to take a risk for me." I looked from her to him. "A risk with other people's lives. He makes me feel like I'm not already dead." The crew had become completely still. Even Martin stopped checking his phone. I opened my hand and looked at the ring. "When we married," Isolde had cried as she pushed it onto my finger. Now she watched me hold hers as though it were a returned prop. She said, "I don't want to spend the rest of my life with a man who thinks surviving is the same as living. Survival matters when people trust you to bring them home." There. That tone. She pointed at me. "You're not commanding sailors. Tobias, I'm trying to prevent an accident. You're afraid." I inspected the aircraft. "You're always afraid now." She glanced at my shoulder. "Afraid of pain. Afraid of flying. Afraid of losing control." My throat tightened. "You know why I can't fly. And I supported you through it." "Supported me?" "Igavutime." "You spent that time in Cashin's trailer." Cashin stepped forward. "Watch yourself." I turned to him. "What are you going to do? Fly at me?" His face twisted, and he took a step closer. Atticus moved between us. "Enough." Isolde grabbed Cashin's arm. Then she looked at me and spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. "You're a coward, Tobias." No one breathed. She continued. "You call fear caution because it sounds better." I put her ring in my pocket. "If that plane goes into the water, your opinion of me won't keep you alive." Cashin laughed. "But I will." I looked directly at him. "You'll be the first one out." His smile faded. I turned to Rachel. "My no-fly objection remains on record." She nodded slowly. "Yes." I pointed at the aircraft. "If production overrides me, remove my name from the flight authorization." Martin said, "Tobias, no. You do not get to ignore my report and use my credentials when the paperwork reaches insurance." Atticus rubbed his jaw. "Grant, stay on the rescue boat." I looked at him. "You're allowing the flight?" "One high pass. Licensed pilot in command." Cashin opened his mouth. Atticus cut him off. You sit in the left seat for camera framing. You do not operate without Captain Owen's direct approval. One pass. No water contact. Cashin gave a thin smile. Understood. I knew he was lying. I also knew I could walk away. Part of me wanted to. Then I looked at the young production assistant loading equipment into the rear cabin. She had no idea what the float attachment looked like beneath the access panel. She trusted the people around her to protect her. So I walked to the rescue boat. Phoebe followed me. You should leave, she said. I know. You warned them. I know. They fired you. Not officially. Your wife just asked for a divorce in front of 60 people. I checked the boat's fuel and emergency equipment. I noticed. Phoebe caught my arm. Stop. I looked at her hand. She released me immediately. You don't have to keep saving people who treat you like this, she said. The assistant in that plane didn't do anything to me. What about Isolde? I looked toward the aircraft. Cashin was helping her into the cabin. His hand rested on her waist. She made her choice. Phoebe's eyes softened. But you're still going after her if something happens. Yes. Why? Because rescue isn't a reward for good behavior. She stared at me, angry and sad at the same time. That's the most admirable thing I've ever hated hearing. I handed her a life jacket. Put this on. I'm not getting on the boat. Then stand farther from the dock. The wind's increasing. She took the jacket. You really can't help yourself. No. She looked down at the straps. I hope someday someone protects you with the same stubbornness. I had no answer. Captain Owen Barrett sat in the right seat of the seaplane. He was a licensed commercial pilot with years of floatplane experience. I trusted him. I did not trust the man beside him. Before the engine started, I called Owen over the radio. Maintain 800 feet. One pass. No descent over the bay. Understood. He replied. Any fluctuation from the left engine. Abort immediately. Cashin's voice came through. Relax. Captain, some of us are still allowed to have fun. You are not a captain. A few people on the production channel laughed. Cashin answered. And you're not a pilot. I held the radio tighter. Owen said sharply. Cashin, keep the channel clear. The aircraft taxied away from the dock. The left float rode lower than I liked. Dennis stood beside me on the rescue boat. This is a bad idea. It stopped being an idea when the engine started. Atticus climbed onto the chase boat with the camera team. Martin joined him. Rachel remained on shore, speaking urgently into her phone. Phoebe stood near the dock, wearing the life jacket I had given her. The seaplane accelerated. For 1 second, the damaged float struck the water hard enough to throw spray over the wing. My chest tightened. Then the aircraft lifted. Owen climbed to 800 feet. The first turn was controlled. I watched the left engine instruments through a telemetry monitor connected to production. Pressure was stable. Temperature was slightly high. Cashin's voice came through the radio. Let's make the first pass. Owen answered, holding 800. The cameras need us lower. They were told the altitude. Isolde's voice followed. Could we drop a little? The shot won't feel fast from this height. I pressed the transmit button. No descent. Cashin laughed. Is that your husband or your parole officer? Isolde replied, soon to be ex-husband. Several people on the channel went silent. Cashin said, then let's give him something to remember. The aircraft began descending. I stared at the altimeter feed. 700 feet. 600. I raised the radio. Captain Barrett, you are below the approved altitude. Owen answered through clenched teeth. Cashin, release the controls. Cashin said, I've got it. No, you don't. The plane dropped below 400 feet. Dennis swore. I called again. Climb now. Cashin answered, you're not in command anymore. Tobias, you have 6 people aboard, and they're having a great time. A woman in the rear cabin gave a nervous laugh. Then I heard Owen say, hands off the yoke. Cashin ignored him. The seaplane crossed the first camera marker at less than 200 feet. The chase boat crew cheered. Cashin heard them. That was all the encouragement he needed. He banked for another pass. I looked at the telemetry. Left engine temperature continued rising. Barrett, abort. Owen responded, attempting to. Cashin said, one more. No. Owen snapped. We're done. The second pass began lower than the first. I heard the engine cough. It was a small sound. Most people on the boats did not react. I did. Left engine contamination. I said into the radio. Level the wings and climb. The engine coughed again. Owen said, Cashin, release the controls. I have it. You're pulling too hard. The aircraft yawed left. I watched the wing dip. Do not turn toward the dead engine. I shouted. Right rudder. Level the wings. Owen fought the controls. Cashin yelled, "Stop touching me. I'm the pilot in command." The left propeller slowed. The aircraft lost altitude. Isolde screamed. Cashin pulled back. The nose rose too sharply. Bleeding speed. "Lower the nose." I shouted. "Do not stall it." Owen grunted. There was a struggle inside the cockpit. Then his voice came through. "I have control." He pushed the nose down, but the aircraft was already too low. The water rushed beneath them. "Prepare for emergency landing," Owen ordered. A camera operator shouted from the rear. Isolde called Cashin's name. Cashin did not answer. I grabbed the rescue boat controls. Dennis started the engine. Over the radio, I told Owen, "Keep the left float off the water as long as possible." He understood immediately. "The attachment? It may fail on impact." Cashin shouted. "What does that mean?" No one answered him. The plane approached the surface. For a moment, it looked controlled. The right float touched first, then the left. The corroded assembly broke exactly where I had marked it. The float tore away. The wing dropped. The aircraft spun sideways and flipped. The radio cut out. I pushed the throttle forward before the wreck stopped moving. Behind me, crew members screamed for the Coast Guard. Atticus shouted from the chase boat, "Tobias, wait for the divers. They'll drown." The rescue boat struck the first wave hard enough to send pain through my shoulder. I kept going. Fuel spread around the upside-down aircraft. Dennis looked at the slick. "We can't use the engine near them. Cut it at 30 yards. He killed the motor. I pulled on my dive vest. Phoebe's voice came from the shore radio. "Tobias, don't." I secured the cutting tool. "Call the Coast Guard. Tell them 6 trapped. Aircraft inverted. Fuel leak. They already know. Then tell them I'm entering." She was silent for half a second. "Your shoulder is attached." "Barely." I put on my mask and entered the water. The cabin was already filling. I found the sound technician first. His harness had jammed. His eyes were wide behind his mask, and he clawed at the buckle. I grabbed his wrist and forced him to look at me. "Stop fighting." He shook his head wildly. I cut the strap and guided him through a broken side window. Dennis pulled him onto the boat. I went back. The second person was the camera operator. Blood ran from a cut above his eye. I freed him and pushed him toward the surface. My shoulder began to burn. On the third dive, I reached Owen. He had been struck by part of the instrument panel, but he was conscious. He pointed toward the rear cabin. "Get them first." I cut his belt. "You're first because you can help topside." He tried to argue. I shoved the spare regulator into his mouth and pulled him out. By the time I returned, the aircraft had sunk another foot. Inside the rear cabin, Cashin kicked at the emergency exit. Every impact bent the damaged frame farther inward. A young female assistant, Lily, reached for the spare breathing regulator clipped near the seat. Cashin saw it. He tore it from her hand. She grabbed his sleeve. He elbowed her away. Her head struck the cabin wall. I caught the regulator hose and ripped it from Cashin's grip. He swung at me underwater. I blocked the blow and shoved him against the seat. His eyes were wild. I put the regulator in Lily's mouth. Cashin lunged for it again. I pressed my forearm against his chest and pointed toward Isolde. Her belt was trapped beneath a twisted seat frame. "Help her," I ordered through hand signals. Cashin shook his head. He pushed past me and forced himself through the broken exit. The brave man Isolde had chosen did not look back. Lily was barely conscious. I guided her toward the opening and handed her to an arriving rescue diver. Then I returned for my wife. Isolde saw me and began crying. She grabbed my vest with both hands. "Tobias." Her voice came through the small air pocket above us. "I'm here. I'm sorry." "Breathe slowly." "I didn't mean it." "Save your air." Her belt would not release. I pulled the cutting tool from my vest. She clutched my wrist. "I thought you were trying to control me." "Apologies don't increase oxygen." Her face crumpled. I pushed the regulator toward her. "Breathe." She obeyed. I cut through the first layer of the harness. My left shoulder failed halfway through the second. The knife slipped from my hand. Pain spread from my neck to my fingers. For 1 second, my arm would not move. Isolde saw it. Her eyes widened. "Tobias?" I trapped the knife against my palm with my other hand. "Stop talking." I braced my injured shoulder against the seat and forced the blade through the final strap. The belt snapped. Isolde fell against me. I guided her toward the exit. As another diver took hold of her, she wrapped her fingers around my arm. "Come with me. There's one more." Her grip tightened. "Don't leave me." I removed her hand. You're safe. Then I went back for Lily. By the time I dragged her through the broken window, my left arm was useless. Dennis and Owen pulled her onto the rescue boat. I tried to climb after her, but my hand slipped. Someone grabbed the back of my vest and hauled me onto the deck. I lay there coughing while the Coast Guard boats approached. Isolde crawled toward me. Tobias. I rolled onto my back. She touched my face with a shaking hand. You came. Before I could answer, Cashin began shouting from the other side of the boat. He knew. His publicist had reached the rescue vessel from the chase boat. Cashin pointed at me. He knew the aircraft was defective. For one foolish second, I thought he was admitting that I had warned them. Then he continued. He inspected it. He was responsible for safety. This happened because he failed to do his job. Dennis stared at him. What the hell are you saying? Cashin ignored him. Reporters were already filming from another boat. He raised his voice. Tobias Grant cleared that plane. No, he didn't. Dennis snapped. Cashin's publicist grabbed Dennis's arm. Do not make statements until production counsel arrives. I pushed myself upright. My shoulder felt as though something had torn inside it again. I looked at Isolde. She had heard every warning. She had watched me attach the red tag. She had stood beside Cashin when he ripped it away. Tell them, I said. Her lips parted. Cashin looked at her. His publicist whispered, Isolde, don't say anything yet. I held my wife's gaze. Tell them I stopped the flight. She looked at the reporters, then at Cashin, then back at me. Her face was pale, exhausted, and frightened, but she remained silent. I had gone into a sinking aircraft for her, without hesitation. She could have saved me with one sentence. She chose not to. Isolde's silence lasted less than 10 seconds. It was still long enough to destroy me. A Coast Guard medic wrapped a blanket around her shoulders while reporters shouted from the surrounding boats. Ms. Wynne, did your husband approve the flight? Did Tobias Grant know about the mechanical issue? Was this caused by improper maintenance? I waited for her to say one sentence. He tried to stop us. Instead, Cashin's publicist, Graham Voss, stepped between her and the cameras. My clients have just survived a traumatic accident. There will be no further comments until the facts are established. Cashin pointed at me again. He inspected the plane. Dennis Holt moved toward him. You lying son of a. Graham blocked Dennis with one arm. Anything you say may expose you and the production to legal liability. Dennis shoved his hand away. I signed Tobias's no-fly report. Martin Shaw's attorney appeared behind him. Dennis, stop talking. I looked at Isolde. Tell them. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Tobias, not now. Cashin just blamed me for an accident he caused. You're injured. Let the attorneys handle it. You heard every warning. Her eyes shifted toward the reporters. Graham leaned close to her and whispered something. Isolde's expression changed. Her fear became calculation. She lowered her voice. Please don't make this worse. I stared at her. I pulled you out of a sinking aircraft, and I'm grateful. Then tell the truth. She looked away. That was when I understood the rescue had changed nothing. The woman underwater had needed me. The woman on the boat still chose him. The first statement went public before I left the hospital. Cashin's agency claimed the production had relied on its experienced military aviation consultant to inspect and approve the aircraft. It never mentioned my written warning. It never mentioned Cashin taking the controls. It said the cause of the accident remained unknown, but suggested serious failures in technical oversight. By morning, my name was everywhere. Former Navy pilot linked to Florida Keys film disaster. Jealous husband failed to ground defective aircraft. Did Tobias Grant risk his wife's life after discovering her on-set romance? Someone leaked my medical history. Clips spread of Isolde telling the crew I suffered from vertigo. Commenters called me unstable, bitter, and desperate to feel important. One account posted a photograph of me being pulled onto the rescue boat. The caption read, "He couldn't even climb aboard without help, but they trusted him with aviation safety." My phone filled with messages. Some told me to kill myself. Others accused me of intentionally causing the crash. A stranger sent the address of my mother's house in Virginia and wrote, "Heroes don't hide behind their injuries." I forwarded everything to my attorney, then turned off the phone. 5 minutes later, someone knocked on my hotel door. Isolde stood outside wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap. Her publicist, Naomi Cole, waited behind her. I left the door half open. "What do you want?" She removed the glasses. There were bruises beneath her eyes. "We need to talk, then talk. Privately." I looked at Naomi. Your publicist can wait in the hall. Naomi opened her mouth, but Isolde raised a hand. It's fine. She entered. I did not offer her a seat. Isolde saw the sling around my shoulder. Did the doctor say you'll need surgery? Possibly. Her face tightened. I'm sorry. For the shoulder or the statement? I didn't write the statement. You allowed it. Cashin's agency released it without consulting me. You still haven't corrected it. She rubbed her forehead. The situation is complicated. No, the aircraft was unsafe. I grounded it. Cashin ignored the flight plan. That is simple. The movie has $200 million invested in it. And Lily almost drowned. Lily survived. Because I took the regulator back from your boyfriend. Her eyes flashed. Don't call him that. What should I call the man you chose while handing me your wedding ring? Naomi knocked once and entered without permission. We need to keep this productive. I turned toward her. Leave. Tobias. The studio's position. I don't care about the studio's position. Isolde touched Naomi's arm. Give us a minute. Naomi hesitated, then stepped back into the hallway. Isolde waited until the door closed. If Cashin admits he was operating the aircraft, his career is over. I laughed once. That's your concern? The insurance company may refuse coverage. The film could be canceled. Hundreds of people could lose work. He endangered those people. And you're not in the entertainment industry. I stared at her. She continued carefully, as though explaining something to a child. You're behind the scenes. This news cycle will pass. People will forget your name. They're threatening my family. It's awful, but it won't affect your future. You don't know that. You're retired. The word hit harder than the insults online. She stepped closer. You don't need public approval. Tobias. Cashin does. If he's blamed, every contract he has disappears. So, I should take the blame because I have less to lose? That isn't what I said. It's exactly what you said. Her shoulders sagged. Just be mature about this. I took a slow breath. Do you know what people are saying about me? Don't read it. I'm being called a murderer. Then stop feeding the story. I asked you to tell the truth. And I'm asking you to give us time. Us. She froze. I reached into my bag and removed copies of my inspection report. I placed them on the table one by one. The photographs of the corroded float. The engine contamination. Dennis's signature. Rachel's acknowledgement. My written objection to the flight. You knew all of this before takeoff. I said. Isolde looked at the documents. Her lips trembled, but she did not deny it. I asked, did you ever love me? She lifted her eyes. Don't make this dramatic. I nearly destroyed my shoulders saving you. I said I was grateful. Grateful people do not let their rescuers be framed. Her expression hardened. You always do this. Do what? Make everything about sacrifice. The Navy. The crash. Your injury. Now this rescue. I'm making this about the truth. You're making it harder for everyone. That sentence ended my marriage more completely than the ring in my pocket. I took it out and set it on top of the reports. My attorney will contact yours. Her face changed. Tobias. We're done. You're angry. No. I was angry when you called me a coward. I was angry when you boarded that aircraft. I was angry when you stayed silent on the rescue boat. I opened the door. Now I just understand you. She did not move. You would really throw away our marriage over one mistake? I looked at her. The crash was one mistake. What you did after I saved you was a choice. Naomi stepped forward, but I held the door open. Isolde's eyes filled with tears. I felt nothing. Get out. Phoebe released her recording that afternoon. The video began with Cashin holding the red warning tag and mocking me for grounding the aircraft. It captured Isolde exposing my vertigo. It captured her calling me a coward. It captured me warning that the float could separate. The clip spread quickly, but it did not settle anything. Cashin's agency claimed Phoebe had edited the confrontation to protect me. Isolde's fans found Phoebe's social media accounts and flooded them with abuse. They called her a mistress. They claimed she had sabotaged the film because she wanted my marriage to fail. A reporter caught her outside the production compound. Phoebe, are you romantically involved with Tobias Grant? She stopped walking. No. Do you have feelings for him? She looked toward the camera. Yes. Within minutes. That answer became the headline. I called her. You shouldn't have said that. She sounded exhausted. I wasn't going to lie. They'll use it against you. They already were. You could lose your job. I was suspended this morning. I closed my eyes. Phoebe, no. Don't apologize. You defended me because you like me. I defended you because they lied. They'll say those are the same thing. Then they're stupid. Despite everything, I almost smiled. She continued. Liking you does not change the corrosion. It does not change the engine failure. It does not change what Cashin did inside that plane. My smile disappeared. The cabin cameras. What? There were cameras inside and outside the aircraft. Phoebe went silent. I stood. How many? At least 4 on the seaplane. 2 on the boats. Nolan had a body camera for the underwater shots. Where is the footage? Production said most of it was lost. Do you believe that? No. Neither did I. Phoebe found Nolan Pierce, the underwater cinematographer, at a motel outside Key Largo. He opened the door only after she threatened to call his wife and explain why reporters were waiting outside their home. When I arrived, he was pacing with both hands on his head. I signed a non-disclosure agreement. He said, a non-disclosure agreement doesn't cover evidence in a federal investigation. I replied, the studio's lawyers said releasing anything could destroy the insurance claim. Phoebe stepped toward him. Did you back up the footage? Nolan looked at her. She did not blink. Finally, he dropped into a chair. I always back up everything before handing over the cards. Where is it? In encrypted storage. Does it show Cashin flying? Yes. Does it show Tobias warning them? Yes. I asked. Does it show what happened in the cabin after impact? Nolan swallowed. The rear camera kept recording. Phoebe's hands curled at her sides. Then it shows Cashin taking Lily's regulator. Nolan's face went pale. I haven't watched all of it. I have. Phoebe said. We both turned toward her. She explained that she had seen a low-resolution feed on the rescue monitor before production shut it down. Nolan rubbed his mouth. If this comes out, the movie is finished. I answered. If it stays hidden, my life may be. He looked ashamed. I can't release it without authorization from the director. Phoebe picked up her phone. Then we go to the director. Atticus Calloway lived in a rented house away from the crew. When he opened the door and saw Phoebe, his expression tightened. You shouldn't be here. Neither should Tobias's name be on every network as the man who caused your crash. Atticus looked at me, then at Nolan. What did you bring? The backup. Nolan said. Atticus stepped aside. Inside, Phoebe walked directly into the study as though she had been there before. Atticus followed her. You do not get to storm into my house and issue demands. She turned. You don't get to hide evidence. I'm not hiding evidence. Investigators will receive it. When counsel approves the release. That could take months. The film has investors, insurers, distributors, and hundreds of employees. And Tobias has death threats. Atticus looked at her with a mixture of anger and pain. You are emotionally involved. That doesn't make me wrong. Dad. I stared at them. Phoebe closed her eyes briefly. Atticus looked at me. She uses her mother's last name professionally. You're his daughter? Phoebe crossed her arms. This is not the part of the conversation that matters. Atticus sank into a chair. If we release the footage publicly, the insurer may deny every claim. Distribution will collapse. The studio will sue me for allowing the stunt to proceed. You did allow it, Phoebe said. His jaw tightened. I believe Captain Barrett could control the flight. Tobias told you the aircraft itself was unsafe. I know. Phoebe's voice broke. He already lost flying because he saved people. Are you really going to let him lose his name for doing it again? Atticus looked at me. If I publish this, the film is dead. I'm not asking you to publish it. Phoebe spun toward me. What? Give it to investigators. By the time they finish, Cashin's version will be permanent. I won't demand that hundreds of crew members lose money to protect me. She stepped close enough that I could see tears in her eyes. That is why they chose you. I frowned. What? They knew you would worry about everyone else. Cashin knew you wouldn't burn down the production to save yourself. Atticus lowered his head. Phoebe turned back to him. You've spent your whole career filming men who run toward danger. Don't. There is one standing in your study, and you're letting the fake hero destroy him, because the fake hero has top billing. Atticus's face went still. For a long time, no one spoke. Then he looked at Nolan. Show me everything. The complete video went online the next evening. Atticus appeared first. He accepted responsibility for allowing production pressure to override my safety recommendation. He announced that the film's release had been suspended and that all original recordings had been provided to federal investigators. Then the footage played. The public watched me identify the corrosion. They watched Cashin strike my injured shoulder. They watched Isolde remove her ring and call me a coward. They heard me warn that the float would break. They saw Cashin descend below the approved altitude and fight Captain Barrett for control. They saw the engine fail. They saw the aircraft flip exactly as I predicted. Then they saw Cashin tear the regulator from Lily's hands. They saw me take it back. They saw him abandon Isolde and force his way out. Finally, they saw Isolde trapped underwater, clutching my vest. Tobias, please save me. The clip cut to her earlier words. You're not even a pilot anymore. Then back to her crying. I knew you would come. The internet changed sides in less than an hour. Veterans defended me. Rescue pilots analyzed every decision I made. Lily released a statement confirming Cashin had taken her air supply. One of the survivors from my Navy rescue appeared on television. Tobias Grant stayed until every one of us was alive. He said, that man has never been a coward. Cashin's agency removed its original statement. Too late. His sponsors canceled contracts before midnight. Isolde's publicist resigned the next morning. By noon, reporters surrounded my hotel. I was leaving through the side entrance when Isolde pushed through the crowd. She had no makeup, no sunglasses, and no team protecting her. Tobias. I kept walking. She caught my sleeve. Please. Cameras turned toward us. Her fingers tightened. Don't leave me. I looked down at the hand that had remained still while the world called me a murderer. Then I removed it from my arm. You already left. Cashin Reed spent years selling the public a man who never panicked. The federal investigators destroyed that image in one press conference. They confirmed he had operated the seaplane without a valid medical clearance, without a current seaplane rating, and against the instructions of the pilot in command. The cockpit footage showed him forcing the aircraft below the approved altitude and refusing to release the controls when Captain Barrett tried to take over. The investigator paused before answering the final question. Mr. Reed's actions created the emergency. His conduct after impact also endangered another survivor. Every network replayed the footage of Cashin taking Lily's regulator. His agency dropped him that afternoon. 3 studios canceled his upcoming projects. A watch company removed his face from every advertisement. His attorney issued a statement claiming he had suffered an involuntary trauma response. Lily answered with 6 words. He panicked. Tobias Grant did not. Cashin tried to shift the blame to Isolde. He released private messages in which she encouraged him to make the stunt more exciting. One read, Tobias will hate it if you go lower. Do it anyway. Another said, give them a shot no stunt double could fake. Isolde responded by accusing Cashin of manipulating her and lying about his qualifications. Their romance ended the same way it had begun, through publicity. Only now, neither of them controlled the story. Isolde lost 2 endorsement contracts in a week. Her streaming series replaced her before production started. The studio suspended every project attached to her name. The public did not forgive her silence. Having an affair was ordinary celebrity scandal. Allowing the man who saved her life to be framed was something else. My attorney, Evelyn Price, watched the news from the other side of her desk. They're turning on each other. She said, I noticed. Cashin's lawyers are offering cooperation. In exchange for what? Reduced exposure in the civil cases. He'll testify that Isolde pressured production to proceed. I leaned back carefully. My shoulder was still strapped after the second surgery. Is that true? Partly. The evidence shows he pushed harder than anyone. Then he should testify to the whole truth. Evelyn closed a folder. You understand both of them want settlements. I don't want Isolde's money. This isn't about money. A settlement can include a written admission, public correction, and restrictions on future statements. She already had a chance to correct the record. Yes, but now she can be legally required to. I looked at the divorce papers in front of me. Make the public correction part of the agreement. Any damages paid to me go to Lily and the injured crew members. Evelyn studied me. You nearly lost your career and reputation. I don't need their money to rebuild either one. You might be the most difficult client I've ever represented. I've been told I have control issues. She smiled. Sign the last page. I did. 3 weeks later, my marriage officially ended. I expected anger. Instead, I felt relief. Isolde requested one final meeting. Evelyn advised against it. She's represented by counsel. She said, anything important can go through them. She says it isn't about the case. That's exactly why you shouldn't go. I looked at the message Isolde had sent. Please give me 20 minutes without lawyers, cameras, or publicists. I need to apologize as your wife, not as an actress. 20 minutes. I said, Zeit. I'll be nearby. Isolde chose a private conference room at the hotel where we had once celebrated our first anniversary. She was already seated when I arrived. No makeup, no assistant, no phone on the table. She stood quickly. Your shoulder. It's healing. Will you regain full movement? The surgeon thinks so. She pressed her lips together. I'm glad. I remained standing. You asked for 20 minutes. She sat again and folded her hands. I ended things with Cashin. That's no longer my concern. He was using me. He blamed you because blaming me stopped working. She flinched. You always see the ugliest explanation. Lately, it keeps being correct. Her eyes filled. I've started therapy. That's good. I finally understand why I did all of this. I checked the time. You have 18 minutes. Her expression tightened. Can you please stop treating this like a briefing? No. She looked down. I was angry at you for years. I know. You missed everything. I know. Premieres, birthdays, holidays. I would see other couples together. And I had to smile while people asked where my husband was. I was deployed. I know that now. You knew it then. She wiped beneath one eye. I told myself the Navy always came first. The people in the water came first. And I was never in the water. I stared at her. Is that what you wanted? A disaster so I could prove I would choose you? No. But when the plane flipped, you knew I would come. Her shoulders began shaking. Yes. That's the problem. Isolde. She looked up. You knew there was nothing you could do that would stop me from trying to save you. You treated my loyalty like property. I didn't understand that. You understood enough to use my medical condition against me. I was angry. You gave Cashin the details. She covered her face for a moment. I wanted him to understand why you were acting that way. You wanted him to laugh at me with better information. She lowered her hands. I was cruel. Yes. I thought he was brave. He took Lily's heir and left you behind. I know. You called me a coward because I refused to let him risk everyone else. I know. Her voice broke. Tobias. When I was trapped, I thought I was going to die. Then I heard you. I knew you would not leave me. I didn't. You came back even after what I said. That was my job. You weren't employed anymore. Rescue was still my job. She reached across the table. I moved my hand before she could touch it. Her fingers froze. I still love you. No. You miss being loved by me. That isn't fair. It's exact. She stood and walked around the table. I can change. I hope you do. Then give me a chance to prove it. I shook my head. Before the crash, you humiliated me while you were angry and proud. I might have forgiven that someday. Hope flashed across her face. I continued. After the crash, you were safe. You had time. You understood what Cashin was doing. You still let him blame me. Her face collapsed. He said the film would be destroyed. And you decided my name was cheaper. I was scared. You weren't trapped underwater anymore. She began crying openly. I made the worst decision of my life. No. You made a series of decisions. The affair, the flight, the silence, the hotel meeting where you told me to be mature while strangers threatened my mother. I'm sorry. I believe you. She stared at me. You do. I believe you regret the consequences. That isn't all I regret. Maybe not. I moved toward the door. She caught my sleeve, then released at the moment I looked down. The woman you married is still here. She whispered. I faced her. The woman I married would have told the truth on the rescue boat. I can become her again. My hand rested on the door handle. She never existed. I left before the 20 minutes ended. That was the last private conversation I had with Isolde Wynne. She eventually testified against Cashin, admitted that I had grounded the aircraft, and issued a public apology. It did not save her career. Cashin accepted a plea agreement related to reckless operation and endangerment. Civil judgments consumed much of what remained of his fortune. Neither of them returned to major films. For years, they had believed the camera existed to make them heroic. In the end, it simply showed who they were. Captain Elias Mercer called me 6 weeks after the divorce. I hear you're difficult to kill. He said, I had a good rescue team. You were the rescue team. Dennis drove the boat. Fine. You and Dennis can share the medal. I shifted the phone to my right hand. What do you want? Captain? The position you rejected. I assumed it was filled. It was. The man retired. That was fast. He saw your interview schedule and lost the will to continue. I laughed for the first time in days. Mercer became serious. We're expanding the aviation safety division. Military, Coast Guard, emergency management, civilian operators. We need someone who understands mechanical failure, human pressure, and what happens when authority is ignored. You want to make a training program out of my divorce? I want to prevent the next crew from trusting a celebrity more than an aircraft inspector. I looked at the physical therapy bands on my table. I can't fly operational missions. You don't need to. They used to matter to me. I know. I remained silent. Mercer said, "You saved 7 civilians as a pilot. You saved 6 film workers as an advisor nobody listened to. Imagine what happens if people actually listen." The offer arrived that afternoon. This time, I accepted. My first training class included military pilots, Coast Guard crews, state emergency officers, and civilian rescue instructors. A young helicopter pilot named Ryan Keller raised his hand after I finished the accident review. "Sir, how do you know when caution becomes fear?" Several people turned toward him. He added quickly, "I mean, there are times when hesitation kills people too." "You're right," I said. "So, how do you tell the difference?" I leaned against the table. "Fear says something can go wrong. Training tells you how likely it is and what happens if it does." Ryan frowned. "But courage means accepting risk. Your own risk. Sometimes. Not everyone else's without their consent." I pointed toward the image of the broken float assembly. Cashin called this courage. It was ego. I switched to a photograph from my Navy rescue. I stayed in the hurricane because a survivor was still in the water. That decision risked my crew, and I will carry responsibility for it for the rest of my life. The room remained quiet. Courage is not believing you can't fail. Courage is understanding the cost and accepting responsibility before you act. Ryan nodded. "And caution? Caution is how you make sure courage doesn't become stupidity." After class, Mercer waited near the door. "You're good at this." "I talk too much. You used to communicate in checklists." "Checklists don't ask philosophical questions." He handed me a folder. "What's this?" "Your permanent appointment." I looked at the title printed beneath my name, Director of Aviation Safety Training. My throat tightened. Mercer pretended not to notice. "You start Monday." I thought I already started. Today was an audition. "You let me lecture federal personnel without officially hiring me?" He shrugged. "Some of us still know how to take risks." I stared at him. He laughed and walked away before I could answer. For the first time since the Navy grounded me, I did not feel like a former pilot. I felt useful. Phoebe waited until my divorce was final before asking me out. At least, that was how she described it. The first email arrived at 7:05 on a Monday morning. Rescue request 001. Objective: dinner with Phoebe Calloway. Risk level: low. Required equipment: 1 clean shirt and basic conversational ability. Expected benefit: improved morale and possible dessert. I replied 20 minutes later. Rejected for revision. Deficiencies: location unspecified. Transportation plan absent. Basic conversational ability cannot be assumed. No contingency procedure if dessert is unavailable. She sent back, "You are deeply annoying." I answered, "Noted as an additional operational hazard." The next request was for a baseball game. She included parking instructions, weather alternatives, emergency nachos, and a section titled Management of Tobias's Excessive Seriousness. I corrected the date format and returned it. A week later, she sent one for coffee, then a museum, then a walk after work. I edited every application and approved none. She eventually called me. "You understand normal men just say no, right?" I never said no. "You keep returning my invitations with red comments." "The risk assessments are incomplete." The coffee request had 14 pages. "You failed to identify the nearest hospital." "We were going to a coffee shop, not invading a country." "Burn injuries happen." She went silent. Then she laughed so hard she had to hang up. Our conversations became part of my routine. She told me about growing up around film sets and hiding her connection to Atticus because she wanted people to judge her work instead of her name. I told her about the nights after my injury when I would sit on the floor because lying in bed made the room feel as if it were rolling. She did not tell me I was brave. She listened. When my shoulder hurt, she noticed before I said anything. When reporters approached, she never spoke for me unless I asked. She did not demand proof that I cared. She simply kept showing up. That frightened me more than the seaplane had. Then the application stopped. 3 weeks passed. I checked my inbox more often than I wanted to admit. Finally, I called her. She answered on the 4th ring. "Director Grant, you stopped submitting requests." I assumed they had all been denied. They were returned for correction. Tobias. Request number 8 included a blood type, evacuation route, and notarized confirmation that the restaurant served dessert. The emergency contact was incomplete. "My emergency contact is my father. You have his number." That was not listed. She sighed. "What do you want?" The question caught me off guard. "To know why you stopped." "Because I meant what I said." "What did you say?" "I like you." I'm not ashamed of it, and I don't expect a reward for helping you. But I'm not going to spend a year turning myself into paperwork so you can avoid answering me. I wasn't avoiding you. You can enter a sinking aircraft with leaking fuel. But dinner requires 8 revisions. That's different. Exactly. Her voice softened. I'm not a sold. I know. Then stop punishing me for what she did. I'm not. You're punishing yourself. Then, I sat down. For several seconds. Neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, I trusted her with every weakness I had. I know. She used them in front of a crowd. I know. You could do the same. Yes. Her answer surprised me. She continued, anyone you love could hurt you. I could lie. I could leave. I could become someone you don't recognize. That isn't helping. I'm not trying to sell you a guarantee. Then what are you offering? Honesty, effort, the chance to leave if either of us stops giving those things. I looked at the unanswered applications saved on my computer. I know this could be real. I said, is that the problem? Yes. She exhaled slowly. I won't disappear. But I'm done chasing someone who refuses to move. Then she ended the call. Phoebe received a courier envelope at work the following Friday. She later told me she assumed it contained legal documents. Inside was a formal rescue request printed on government-style letterhead. Application status. Approved. Applicant. Phoebe Lane Calloway. Requested operation. Long-term relationship with Tobias Grant. Risk classification. Significant emotional vulnerability. Primary objective. Establish an honest, stable partnership without deception. Disappearance. Public humiliation. Or misuse of confidential emotional information. Expected benefits. Trust. Shared meals. Inappropriate jokes during serious moments. Improved morale. And possible permanent commitment. Additional conditions. The applicant must allow Tobias Grant to take the relationship seriously. The applicant must communicate directly when angry. The applicant must not treat affection as a publicity stunt. The approving officer must accept that caution cannot remove all emotional risk. At the bottom, beneath my signature, I had written, Mission start requested immediately. Phoebe read it twice. Then she looked up. I stood across the room holding a bouquet that had been damaged by the wind outside. Several flowers leaned in different directions. She pressed the document against her chest. Is this your idea of romance? I'm better at operational planning. You misspelled vulnerability in the first draft, didn't you? I corrected it. She walked toward me. Did Mercer review this? He made unnecessary comments. Did your attorney? She advised me not to use the phrase permanent commitment without clarification. Phoebe stopped in front of me. You had this legally reviewed? I wanted it done correctly. She laughed, but her eyes filled with tears. I held out the flowers. I know how to get people out of sinking aircraft. I've heard. I know how to train pilots and write emergency procedures. You're very impressive, but pursuing someone I care about is new. Her smile softened. I may need instruction. She looked at the bouquet. First lesson. Stop holding flowers like they're emergency equipment. I loosened my grip. She took them, set them aside, and wrapped her arms around me. My shoulders still ached when I held her. This time, the pain did not feel like a reminder of everything I had lost. It felt like proof I had survived long enough to begin again. Phoebe pulled back and picked up a pen. What are you doing? Correcting the application. She wrote beneath my final line. Mission start. Immediately. Then she added. First operation. Dinner. Risk level. Accepted. I looked at her. Location unspecified. She grabbed my shirt and kissed me before I could return the form. For years, I had believed courage meant refusing to leave until everyone was safe. Sometimes it did, but courage was also walking away from someone who treated loyalty like weakness. It was accepting that losing the cockpit did not mean losing my purpose. And sometimes it was standing in front of a good woman with ruined flowers. No guarantee, and nowhere left to hide. Phoebe smiled against my lips. Application approved? I put my arms around her. Approved.